Hey, what's going on, Facebook fam? This is Tahir Johnson, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Business Development Manager at NCIA. And I'm here with my good friend, Christine De La Rosa, CEO and National Co-Founder of the People's Dispensary. What's going on, Christine? She's a long time. She's been a member of NCIA for a number of years. So I wanted to have her on to talk about her experience with the dispensary and building a business and just chop it up about a couple things. So glad to have you, Christine.
Thank you for inviting me to here.
Yeah. So how's it going? Where are you at nowadays?
Right now, I'm in Austin, Texas with my parents. Well, not with them. We have another house, but I could come down here to take care of my family for a couple of months. And I thought it would be no problem. I was flying a lot, so I could fly back and forth to the Bay, back and forth to Portland. And it wasn't going to be a big deal for me to be down here for an extended period of time. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and I'm not going to get on a plane right now. So it's been really interesting. I've been really grateful for being able to do Zoom, to be able to connect with my folks in Portland and also in Oakland.
For sure. And well, yeah, I'm sure if you, like you said, if you have older parents, I'm sure it's definitely great that you're there to be able to.
I love it, to be honest with you, to be able to be around them. And, you just never know in this world.
Mm-hmm. So are you originally from Texas?
I am originally from Texas.
Got it. Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So you have to tell us. So how'd you end up in California?
I actually was working for Verizon Wireless, and I'm a database architect, and they were rolling out the LTE program before 5G, and they asked me to live there for a year. Their Walnut Creek has a headquarters, and I was in the headquarters in Irving, Texas, which is by Dallas. And so they moved me out there for a year. They paid for it. I thought, this is going to be fun. I'll get to experience California. I had a house here. And after the first year, I'm like, I can't come back to Texas. It's so beautiful here. And the weather's so amazing here. So I sold my house in Dallas and I moved to California thinking that that's where I would be for quite some time. And I was there for 13 years.
Nice. So tech was tech where most of your professional experience was before cannabis?
I did a lot of tech. I worked for all the major telecoms. I consulted all across the US. So that was my actual job before I got sick.
That's super interesting. It's one of the things that I always like to do is kind of figure out how people's existing professional skills that they had helped them to be able to transition into cannabis. So for you, how was that experience helpful for you in starting the dispensary and everything you do now?
I think it's helpful for me now because I really understand databases. So we were able to I understood how the POS systems were working. I understood how Metric was going to work. I was able to put in some of our own databases. Like I built some for us to capture customer data before there were POS systems that did that. So we caught a lot of customer data that now the POS systems do by automatically, but that we're not doing it at that point. I think it really helped me define our customer base. And really understand who was coming to our store, who was purchasing and what they were purchasing. So that was cool.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a really important point. Being able to use technology, having an understanding of it can definitely be something that can boost your business.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, you transitioned to tech. Tell me about what was it that attracted you to the cannabis industry, and tell us about the People's Dispensary. How did you, what was that process? How did you start it?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't ever expect that I would be in the cannabis industry. That was like not something that was in my mind. But then in 2010, I got really sick and I almost died. I had a pulmonary embolism and I had been sick for about 3 years, but nobody could figure out what it was. And it was when I almost died, I was in the hospital for an extended period of time and they were able to diagnose me with systemic lupus. And so that's a really aggressive chronic illness and autoimmune disease. And it affects people very differently. But it affects the largest group affected by lupus is African-American women. The second largest group is Latino women, right? Mm-hmm. And so my doctors started prescribing all these medications to help me. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm doing the air quotes on purpose. Right. And there was 11 medications that I would take per day. 5 of those medications are opioids. Wow. And so I couldn't walk. I was in constant pain, even with these really heavy, like fentanyl patches. Like I had fentanyl patches. That's how bad my pain was. And so I'm taking like Plaquenil, which is big right now because that's the hydrochlorochlorine that everybody's trying to take for COVID. I was taking gabapentin. I was taking Lyrica. I was taking, just a lot of medication, and it really wasn't helping me. So then they put me on those 11 medications plus a monthly infusion, and that helped me walk without a cane, walk with a cane, I mean, for about 2 weeks out of every month. And this was my existence for 5 years. And I had never really thought about doing cannabis, but then I went to this conference in Denver to learn more about alternate medicine. And it was a cannabis conference, and I learned about THC and CBD.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, this might be helpful. I didn't ever think it was going to be the thing that replaced those 11 medications and that infusion. I just thought it would be
Right.
helpful.
Right.
And so I started doing a cannabis regimen until I found one that works for me, still to this day. I do the same regimen that I did in 2015 today, which is a CBD THC combination. And so I got better. I literally got better over the course of 9 months. I stopped taking all 11 of the medications within 9 months, and stopped the infusion in the 10th month, and have not been on medication or infusions for lupus since then. So I've been in remission. And
Wow.
me sticking really closely, and on the times where I've been like, well, maybe I don't need to take the CBD. I would take like a couple of weeks where I didn't do anything, and immediately I'd get sick. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, this is real. I did a lot of testing on myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so I could have gone back to work. I could have gone back to technology. I could have gotten a job pretty much anywhere I wanted to, because my particular skill set is very in demand. But I couldn't imagine going back there knowing that there was a medicine that could have saved 5 years of my life. I literally lived half a life for 5 years. And there were so many women and men, but mostly women of color in my lupus groups and my support groups that were also suffering and would have never thought about cannabis as an alternative medication. And I think for me personally, as somebody who's Mexican, we're taught at a very early age that cannabis, or for us, marijuana, is very bad. If you are Mexican and you do marijuana, you're lazy. My mother would say, don't do that because they'll think you're a lazy Mexican. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so much propaganda around cannabis and around just how terrible it is. And, you're lazy, you're this, all this other stuff. And when really it is a healing thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're over here selling us Oxycontin and saying that's what you should take, but not this other thing that's from a plant, holistic, non-addictive. And it just really made me mad. And so I thought, I can't go back into technology and as a sick person, as a chronically sick person, and not tell people my story and also help them find their own cannabis regimen so that they don't have to be addicted to opioids, so they don't have to take it. And I'm going to be honest with you, like, I still have lupus. There are days where I have really bad days, but they are nothing compared to my best day when I was
Mm-hmm.
on these synthetic drugs.
Right.
And so that's how it came to be. That's how I got into the cannabis business, because I was pissed and because I didn't want other people to waste 5 years of their life like I did because they didn't know,
Right.
or
Well, yeah,
because they had some kind of, personal, shame around it.
right. Yeah, that's actually super dope. And having that medical experience, really understanding the benefits of cannabis is something that we don't talk about enough. I think especially in our communities, Black and Brown communities, where we have had that stigma. For me, avoiding being locked up for cannabis as a Black man was like just making it out of the neighborhood was like a major accomplishment. So to some degree, for us to even consider this industry is always a challenge. So for you, like that stigma, what do you think is what do you think are some of the solutions for us to try to break down that stigma to encourage more Black and Brown people to take advantage of opportunities in the industry?
I mean, I think this is one of the things, talking like this, you and I, is really important. I think one-on-one conversations, I always tell people the most important thing you can do is talk to your family. So like when I decided to go into the cannabis industry, I went home to my parents to let them know I'm about to go into the cannabis industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably going to be really public because I wanted to make sure most people know about that. And they were horrified. They were like, what are you doing? Now they're not horrified. They see what's happening. They've seen my trajectory. And it doesn't I think in communities of color, it really is a familial friend. I know you, you know me, let's have a real conversation, as opposed to large marketing campaigns don't work for a group of people that have been overly policed, overly incarcerated, and overly shamed about this natural plant. So it really is a one-on-one. And I always say the reason we don't see a huge number of Black and brown people investing in cannabis is because, and we see a huge portion of those people that are investing in cannabis are the people, it's because there is a fear. Like there is a fear that you will go to jail. There's a fear that you will die in jail. There's a fear that you'll be incarcerated, even though it's starting to get legalized. And so we are on many different levels being stopped from participating in this industry from old propaganda that has, you know, been done for the last 80 years. And so I think that we really have to start talking to each other, and we have to talk to our families, and we have to have our families talk to their friends. And that's really how it's happened in my world. It's really one-on-one conversations that get passed down. You know, we're, at least Mexican people, we're a culture of storytellers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that storytelling about how my grandmother, my great grandmother used different kinds of herbs and cannabis or marijuana to put together balms and healing stuff that's been going on for centuries, that we were told was wrong, so that we would have to buy stuff that actually is killing us.
Right, right. And I think you're exactly right. One of the biggest things that I think is for us to be able to highlight and tell these stories of people that look like us and influence that next person to be able to take that step to get in the industry. So I definitely want to celebrate, what you've done in the success that you've had with the People's Dispensary. I know that you have multiple locations or in multiple states. Tell us a little bit more about the business.
Sure. So we are trying to be in multiple states. So we just applied for 2 licenses in Chicago with our Anibal Vega, who is going to be on a webinar that NCIA is doing for the Midwest next week. He's our social equity applicant. And so I'm hoping that we get those. We've had some positive interactions. So I know even if we just get one, that will be big. We have a store in Portland right now, and it's operating and it's doing fairly well. I mean, it's hard for people of color, just generally speaking, right?
Right.
We don't have access to, a lot of the capital, even loans, right, are hard. We have a delivery license in Oakland. We applied for a license in Los Angeles, and we did not get the first 100 rounds in the first 100, but now they've added an additional 100. So maybe we get to have that one. And then in Fresno, our co-founders there, Gade and Cesar, have been working really hard for the last year. We were hoping that the applications for that would come out at the end of June, but they still haven't come out because of the pandemic. And a lot of stuff that we had going on stopped at the pandemic. So we're just starting to see a pickup of that coming back in, or coming out of the pandemic. But now we're going back in to another lockdown, so it could push it back even further. I'll tell you that one of the things that around the People's Dispensary that's been really, really hard is just the way that each of the municipalities do things differently. So if you're a large company, you can do all of those regulations and hire people to do your applications, but we do all our own applications. So that's been really difficult to navigate. And that was one of the things, in the DEIC committee with the NCIA that I belong to, that we really talked about how do we get the level of help that social equity applicants need that large organizations already have because they have the funding.
Right. And so, as a matter of fact, like you said, you are a member of NCIA's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. And so the committee just wrapped up its first year. Of course, right now, the committee applications have been extended to August 1st. So anybody that's out there listening, if you're an NCIA member, definitely go out and apply for the committees. But tell us about, what's the experience been like to be a member of NCIA? What if any, how does it help you in business and in the industry, and talk about the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee and what some of the, goals are for, coming up, and, what your experience has been.
It's really interesting. I first heard about the NCIA in January or February of 2017 because the NCIA was having their conference in Oakland. And I remember I read about it and I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I had never, ever been to this type of show. Like I'd been to other conferences for technology, but never cannabis technology. So I signed all of us up and we all went. And it was just amazing to me. Just the level of commerce that was happening there that we as a small operator didn't know. Like we were unaware of the level of what was going on in the legalized cannabis industry, right? Like we were like, wow. And it felt really outside of us. And so when they came up with the diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, I was so excited. And I signed up right away. I applied right away because I thought, oh, this is good. They're like really reaching out to small businesses, women of color, people of color, Black people, brown people, all that good stuff. So last year was the inaugural year of the DEIC. And so I was grateful to be part of it during that time. I think that it was a really great experience for me because it allowed me to see how things work. Like that's the biggest thing I always say for people who are Black and brown is the mystery of how legalization in any industry works because it's about knowledge, right? You think about money, people who have access to information about how to manage money and spend their money and save their money do better than people who don't have any access at all. Same in the cannabis industry. If you don't have access to what's going on in the industry, you're already at a deficit. So it was really educational for me to be part of this committee. And I encourage anybody, not just the DEIC committee, any of the committees, there's several committees that the NCI have, if you really want to be part of the industry and you want to learn about it, this is a good committee and a good organization for you to join. They're not perfect. No organization is perfect, but it is what you make it to be. And I have found that it's been very helpful for me. I'm very grateful for all the people that were on that committee as well. So many brilliant minds that would just trigger a thought. I know to hear that you know what that's like, right? Yeah. Somebody will say something and then you'll be like, oh, and then you'll run with it. And then you'll say something to somebody else and you'll run with it. And this is how you got
right
social equity applicants and current existing people to have free membership. It was a thought, and this is how it happens. And that for me was a very big moment because it showed that you could say something.
Right.
Someone could take that and also say something, and they could take that and actually create a policy. Like, how cool is that, right?
Right.
And that's important. I think this is the biggest singular mistake we made in California. At least I made. I'm not going to speak for other people, but I didn't participate in the regulation creating of the cannabis industry in California because I was just figuring like, oh, they're going to do it. And then I'll just follow the regulations, not knowing that the regulations were going to be so awful. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I just didn't think I could participate in that. Like if it was today, the work I've done at the NCIA and the information and the understanding of how policy works, I would be there every single day. I would be there every single day as a small operator who understands what the burn's going to be that regulators who didn't understand what they were doing were going to place on us that almost would make us fail.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And you are doing some policy stuff now, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We do a lot of policy work. So, and we write a lot. I'm just about to release, probably in the next 2 weeks, the papers we wrote for New York and the ones that we wrote for Fresno, so that people can see like this was 2016, 2018, 2017, 2018. So they can see the work that we wrote in the policy, because I think that sometimes, do you feel this way? I don't know. I felt that way at the beginning. Like policy seems so, I don't know, like such a quagmire. Like I just didn't understand, right? And then when you realize that, oh, it's just people writing out their ideas. Okay,
absolutely.
I can do that, you know?
And one of the biggest things that I've learned here, especially being here in Washington, is that, politicians, again, are people too, and they want to learn, they want to have access to the information. And like you said, if you don't have a seat at the table and you're not one of the people that they're getting the information from, then also you're not a part of setting the agenda. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons that it's so important to have people as members of organizations like this. And to your point, I'm really super excited about us having the diversity, all the work that the DEI committee is doing, and also us doing a scholarship program, being able to give out, complimentary memberships to all social equity licensees and applicants around the country. Will hopefully be able to create not hopefully will be able to create access to that same opportunity, and experience that you had. And so, yeah, I'm super excited about that.
I think the thing that I'm also very excited about that, but I'm also, one of the works that we're going to have to do as the DEI committee and to hear, for your policies and stuff is really get it out to the people and
Right.
explain why it's important. Because sometimes even me, like I went to the conference. I had a great time at the conference. I learned a lot in that 2017 Oakland conference. I still didn't join.
Right.
I was like, oh yeah, this is a conference. And then it was about 6 or 8 months later, y'all were having some kind of local gathering, because y'all used to do the local gatherings in different cities. And I was like, well, we should just become members, because we had already people in different cities, different co-founders. And that's how we became a member. But it took me some time. And that's my fear, is that the people that are social equity applicants and that are social equity licensees have not gotten the word that this is a free thing, and or complimentary or scholarship, maybe that's the better way to put it. And also making sure that they join so that they can get the information and also have their voices heard.
Right.
Big coalition. There's a lot of people of color, whether it's in dispensaries, manufacturing, auxiliary businesses. There's a lot of us in the cannabis industry, and it would be really great to be able to utilize all the information that y'all put out.
Right.
That's really helped me.
Right. Yeah. And, and again, that's why to me, it's so important that we're sharing the stories of, people like you, that have been a part of the organization, the success stories, right? So that you are inspiring that next person to say, I can jump in this industry, I can do it. And then also we do want it to, places are more welcoming, and, when you have people that look like you, that you can, feel at home with. And so, that's what it's all about, creating a culture that is truly diverse, right, inclusive, and of course is very important that we're building equity in the industry, and we see that implemented not only in our membership but in policies as well. So, for
there's
you,
a lot of plays. There's still a lot of plays. People like, oh, we're 33, state. No, you got New York, you got New Jersey, you got Connecticut, you got like the whole East Coast is still going to be coming online. And so it's important right now that people are doing the work in those states, even before, like we don't know when they're going to legalize in New York State.
right.
We have no idea. Supposed to do it this year. They were supposed to do it last year. I mean, I was in New York for 6 months last year waiting for that, right?
Right.
But that doesn't matter. You need to be really still working. And I think being part of the NCIA is helpful, to get informed about things that you can take back to your cities and states. Because that's the thing about cannabis. Everything is state specific, right? So what works in or doesn't work in California, or what works in California may not work in New York. It's a different group of people, a different city, a different vibe, right? And I think that that's been the biggest, I think that's been the biggest problem that we see in the industry as a whole, is that they don't understand that the existing markets in different states are different, and that you should be working to understand what those markets are to help them transition into the regulated market. But because we don't do that work in the upfront, we end up having things like in California where 7 out of 8 people are still buying in the unregulated market. So I just think that there's a lot of things that you can learn in the NCIA, and then there's a lot of learning you can bring to the NCIA.
For sure.
Because it's not a behemoth. It doesn't know everything, right? They're doing the best that they can like everybody else, but we have a lot to contribute in terms of anecdotal evidence, our own personal experience, the experiences of our companies. And so I think that that's a really good way to exchange information.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Just so everybody that doesn't know, this is our 10-year anniversary. Of course, NCI as a trade association, nonprofit. We're all, as an organization, we're all about cannabis regulation, advocacy, community, and education, and trying to build that. So I'll say with the times of COVID, as an organization, we've definitely had challenges, but it was still important for us to be able to put this program together. And definitely you can support us by joining and supporting the NCIA. So, Christine, anything that you want to say for for anybody that wants to pursue opportunities in the cannabis industry, that's thinking about it, what kind of resources do they have? What should people be thinking about in terms of diversity in the industry? What are just some things you think are important for people to know about?
I think people who want to enter the cannabis industry have to know that it's incredibly difficult. I don't think we can sugarcoat that. I don't think it's been incredibly difficult for us. And I know it's been incredibly difficult for a lot of other minority owned businesses, women owned businesses. So it's difficult, but it's not impossible. And be discouraged by me telling you it's difficult. I just don't like to pretend it's all rosy, right? We have to know regulation is hard. The policies that are in certain states are really hard. It's really, really hard. That's really it. But there's still a lot of opportunity. And I think the thing that for me around, especially the NCIA, is the networking that you're able to do with other people that can help you. Because I wish I had that. When we started in 2016, I didn't have anybody. It was just us. And we were just doing it based on our little corner of the world. And I think having access to more information at that time would have changed some of the decisions that we made were not great because we just didn't know any better. It wasn't that we were trying not to be great, we just didn't know any better. And so I would tell you, even though it's hard, connect with these groups, to get more information and data, and also really think about what you want to do in the cannabis industry. Everybody wants to be a retailer, right? They're like, that's the cool thing. And it is, I'm not gonna lie, I love having stores. Like, it's been amazing, and I love being able to procure for them and all that great stuff. But there are so many other businesses in the cannabis industry that are not hard to enter. A lot of the auxiliary businesses are fairly easy. You don't have the same kind of really hard licensing issues. So there's a way to be part of the cannabis industry without actually having to sell cannabis. And so I would tell people to also look at those areas and see where there's lack of that. For me personally, I can tell you right now, we are launching 2 different businesses off of TPD, which is the People's Management, which is a management firm that does a lot of consulting around DEI issues specifically, since we've been doing this for such a long time. And then we also are launching TPD CBD, the People's CBD, which is a whole bunch of stuff that we're doing around hemp-based stuff. So we're launching those 2 things, right? And if I had had the information I have now, I probably could have done that earlier, but I didn't have the information. And so the information becomes super easy. But those are 2 things that we can do that don't require licenses, right? We don't have to go through the state licensing, the city licensing, but these are things we can do. So I want people to start thinking about that, how they can utilize that, how they can do that. What do they know? Are they HVAC people? Are there people that are artists? Are they so many things that you can do? And like for me right now, I really need a marketing firm. Like I really need to hire one of them. All of the marketing firms that I can find that are in cannabis right now that have the level of expertise that I need, I can't find people of color yet. So if you're a person of color that's in the marketing biz right now, here's a great place, because there's people that are looking for you where you don't need a license, but you're like, hey, I've been marketing for Nike, I've been marketing for Adidas, I've been marketing for the small company. It doesn't have to be a big company. Here's my shingle. And this is what I can do, but learn about the industry. Because I've had people that have tried to sell me, and they're like, we can do this and we can do Facebook ads. And I'm like, no, you can't. Like, know your market. So there's so many places that we always are looking for women-owned business, people of color, Black people, businesses to give the money to when we're hiring them. And I can't find that many. And that means that there's a wide open space.
Right. Yeah. Ancillary businesses. Everybody's not going to be an owner. The industry is so huge. There is a whole supply chain, and people need to definitely take advantage of those opportunities. The one last question I did have for you, because something you had made me think about it, and I think it's important to say, because everybody talks about how the cannabis industry is worth billions of dollars, projected to be worth 30 billion, they're saying, by 2025. But for people of color that are business owners, it's not just guaranteed that you get a dispensary or cultivation is successful. It's still a challenge. Like it's tough to make it in this business. For some of those, especially right now, where we're in a climate where so many people and like companies are asking what can they do to help. If there's any like large operators listening or regulators listening that can make a difference, what are some things that they can do to help support minority-owned cannabis businesses, women-owned cannabis businesses, veteran-owned cannabis businesses? Like, what are some things that, that some of these people can do, to help make a difference?
I'm going to say something very radical, and I'm hoping that you don't kick me off the show, but
I mean,
this idea that one or two or three companies have to dominate the market. They have to buy up all of the businesses. They have to consolidate all of the businesses and then make them their brand. I wish this thinking would go away, because some of the ways in which these large organizations, large companies, large corporates can really help the cannabis industry is by supporting already small businesses that are mostly people of color and women owned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that they have to buy them, but they could
Right.
support them. They could become a minority shareholder. But there's this really, it's a sickness in the cannabis industry. And we're seeing this now as we're coming into this, where, you know, you see all of these corporate people that have paired with social equity applicants that have terrible contracts with them. I get to buy you out in 3 months or 3 years, and you get pennies on your dollar, and just some really gross practices. And I always was thinking to myself, why do you not see the value in the people as an investment? Because we are the market.
Right.
The market for cannabis pre-regulation comes out of Black and brown communities.
Absolutely.
We are that market. Why wouldn't a large company come in and say, oh, here's the People's Dispensary, or here's another business that's a small business in Arizona, or here's a small business, and they're doing pretty well, but they need some extra capital, and we want to bring them underneath our company. So let's bring them in, but let them keep their management, let them keep their name, let them keep the brand that they've built on, instead
Right.
of trying to, because I've had 2 offers already on the People's Dispensary just in the last 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
But there are ideas like, we're going to fire all your people, we're going to change the name, and I'm like, I can't do that. Like, we have
Right.
almost 100% Black and brown people that work for our company. You really think I'm going to sell it to you?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to destroy our mission? Like, that's
Right.
not smart. And it's
Right.
not just me. I've talked to a lot of smaller business owners. I think that if, I swear to God, if they had spent, I don't know, let's say 5 of the 50 million that they raised, that they've now lost, on these smaller companies to help them to be part of their team, they would have made more money. They would have more clout in the communities. They would have so much more if they hadn't been greedy. And that's
Right.
the bottom line. If they hadn't said, I'm going to buy everything and I'm going to make it me, 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 me. Well, but that's not working. And this hasn't been working since 2019. And you
Right.
still see it happening today. And I'm like, you don't learn from the
Mm-hmm.
mistakes. So what I would say is to have large groups that have that kind of funding, to really look at smaller operators and be like, how do we support you? Not how do we end you?
Mm-hmm. No, I 100% agree. Like, right, like you said, empowerment is not taking people out of the game, or being authentic to the people from those communities that have the connection. I mean, that's just good branding, right? It's
So
just good.
too.
That seems like it just makes good business sense. So hopefully, that's something people will hear and take the heed. Christine, you know, it's been a pleasure getting to sit here and spend this time with you this morning. It's been fun hanging out. And like I said, I'm definitely looking forward to working together with you on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee over the next year, and all the stuff we want to get done.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. I always have fun time talking with you.
For sure. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.